Hey, event professionals, it's Tay with BlaueXperiential Event Services. Thank you for your interest in episode 6, The Exhibit House, Supplier Insights into Creating Immersive Experiences. As you know, this time of year is very busy for anybody who works in the events industry, and Classic Exhibits has been very generous with their time in allowing us to create this experience. Just know that there are two areas that I don't believe we could have covered it properly and give it the quality and detail that it deserves. And that is the aluminum extrusion and shaping, as well as the woodworking cutouts and shaping. Just know that Classic Exhibits does high quality, detailed work in these areas. And perhaps at a later date, we can go back and show you some of the work that they do. In the meantime, I believe you'll have a great experience and a great learning opportunity here. Thank you for your interest, and I look forward to seeing you again. Take care. Bye. I'm really thrilled that you can join us for this monthly educational webcast, Second Tuesday Events for Event Professionals. I'm the producer, and BlaueXperiential Event Services is the series sponsor. For those of you who don't know, BlaueXperiential supports event managers and event producers by providing consulting services, project management, and carrying out routine tasks like completing logistical documents that always seem to pile up. I'm sure you know what I mean. So if you need help and assistance, check it out. Go to the website, BlaueXperiential.com, and look for our contact information. You can send an email or even book time on our calendar. Today's topic, the exhibit house, supplier insights into creating immersive experiences. Now, this Classic Exhibits is located in Portland, Oregon, actually in Milwaukee, Oregon, just outside of Portland, Oregon. And I think many of you have worked with Classic Exhibits and didn't even know it. So, to make sense of it all, I met with Kevin Carty. He's the executive vice president of Classic Exhibits. He's been with the business since the very beginning for some 30 plus years. We spoke about Classic Exhibits' role, and then he toured me throughout the workspace. As an event producer, I walked away with a wealth of knowledge, and I just wanted to share it with you. I think you'll find it very useful. So Kevin, thank you for joining us. I really appreciate this, and I think this is going to be really helpful to our audience.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So let's just start from the beginning, and if you could just tell us what you do and really what makes you unique among other exhibit houses in the industry.
Sure. So Classic Exhibits is an exhibit designer and producer in North America. We do some international work as well, but primarily in North America. Everything ranging from very, very small tabletop exhibits to large experiential spaces that may include double-deckers, large media centers, broadcast, you kind of name it. We've grown to have the ability to do a little bit of everything. By far the most unique thing about us, Tay, is we are an unbranded entity, so we're behind the scenes. There's not a whole lot of us really anymore in this model. When we started, there was. And what I mean by that is we don't do any direct sales out of this facility. So we have some 300 distributors that are our sales arm, if you will, in their marketplace. And the majority of everything that leaves this building leaves with other exhibit house brands on the crates, on the cases, or agency brands on the cases or the crates. So that does make us quite a bit different than others.
Yeah, okay, great. I mean, that's good to know. So when an organization wants to work with you, then they would go through their agent or a third party if I was a corporation.
Absolutely. If you're a brand, you're typically working with an agency or an exhibit house in your area. They would then be likely partnered with us, and so we would be their partner builder. And that could involve us starting at the design process all the way through implementation.
What are some of the things that we could do from an event manager's perspective to make sure that we're on the right track and to just assure that we're going to get the most important successful outcome?
Sure. I would say it's going to sound obvious, but the most critical thing always is involve us as early as possible. Because we're not a direct selling entity, we're no threat to an exhibit house or an agency. We're a partner. So involve us at the very beginning when you're going through that conversation with your client, what their wants and needs are, how are they going to measure their ROI, what's the product that they're releasing. Have our designers as a part of that call. I always tell people, our creative staff, they hear things so differently than I do. They hear things so differently than our project managers do. And rather than having to interpret that information from what you've heard onto the creative staff, have them as a part of that call. They will ask the right questions as far as what the client's goals are, what their branding needs are. They will get all of that cleared beforehand in the early process.
I'm just curious, with after it goes to a designer, what are some of the steps that follow that?
Sure.
That we then should be aware of, and at what point do you then bring the client back in?
Sure. I often tell people we're a bit of a schizophrenic crew, the 80 to 90 of us, and that's by design. So once the design happens, it will move on into project management, where it's going to end up getting estimated, and oftentimes that can involve the client as well, as we're going through the design and really understanding everything. Are there any additional needs that are going to be needed? Hey, what venue you're going to? Our project managers may want to know so that they can say, that venue is all overhead power as opposed to floor-based power. So that's going to change the way that we might quote and then ultimately build. So we will move into a quoting phase. We'll get the estimate out the door. Once a job sells at that point, then that project manager is going to be partnered up with one of our CAD detailers, a very specialized group of people that work here that will then take that design, they will put it into their CAD program, and they will fully detail it. And it's really to serve three purposes, I'm going to say. First purpose is to feed the machines that we have on our floor. So CNCs, whether it's flatbed cutting, bending, cutting, you name it, we need that in order to do our job on the production floor right. Provide graphic templates for the client as well as the agency so that they can get all the creative done on that. But then we also use those files to then create all of the custom setup instructions, packaging instructions, and they also become then detail files that can be shared so that when the client or their event professional who's helping them out is filling out their show services and whatnot, they've got those to provide to the general contractor to help make the show a success. We've got processes in place where we can send progressive photographs along the way of work being done, but probably the most unique and critical one is at the end of the process. We do a full staging here, whether or not it's going direct to show or it's going to a client first. Most of the time everything's going direct to an event or to a show. So we do a complete staging here with all graphics. Anything that they're willing to provide us, we're going to stage it and have it show ready. We take photographs of that, but most uniquely, both in our rental division as well as in our new purchase division, we have high zoom digital cameras in those setup areas. So we can then give access to the client and the agency to then log in and actually physically preview it on those, or visually preview it on those cameras at any given time. And then the other added for some larger projects is we certainly open our doors for people to come in and it's oftentimes worth several $1,000s in additional savings of shipping something across the country for a preview when the client can fly out here, stay a night in a hotel, and actually do a full preview here, and then we ship it directly onto their event.
Actually, yeah, that's interesting to know, is that with COVID, is there sort of like a pattern that you've seen or some type of just sort of trend among exhibitors who are buying booth properties to come on site and look or not? Is there?
I'm going to actually say it frankly, in our business, it had nothing to do with COVID. It was a process we started really driving off of one build that we had done years ago in the early 2000s, or early 2000s, 2012, 2013-ish timeframe. And it was a very large build, double deck build, and it was going to the Kitchen and Bath Show in Las Vegas. It was in like 18 or 19 crates. They wanted to ship it across country to do a full preview with the client. And then it was going to turn around and it was going to go to Las Vegas right after that. We're like, this is crazy. You know, we can, A, it's not very sustainable. B, it's pretty costly. So we penciled out just some numbers and said, hey, if you guys fly out here, a couple $500 airfare tickets and a night in a hotel, we stage it anyways here. So come out, take a look at it, we'll pack it, and it'll go directly onto the show. I would easily say that, certainly in rentals, but in new build, by far, 90% or more of what leaves this building, small, medium, or large, goes directly to an event, rather than going to a client. Now, part of the other answer to that is, have we seen an uptick? We definitely have seen an uptick since COVID of people who are late 2021 and all of 22 and 23, more of an uptick in people who are flying out here and previewing exhibits of all sizes.
As far as exhibit property, so I go to a show, let's say it was Las Vegas, we have that booth. Where does it go? Do you have capabilities to warehouse it, or does it go with their agent, or they have another primary facility where they're warehousing these things?
All the above.
Oh, okay,
So
great.
we have some storage capabilities here that we offer through our distributor partners on behalf of some of their clients. Most of our distributor partners, if they have any brick and mortar, a lot of it is dedicated to storage, and so they'll offer those services. And then we also have partners that we'll link people with. We don't need to be a part of that, but we'll certainly link them with that. A great example recently was for CES, very, very large build that we did at CES. It's only going to be used once a year, and the next time it's going to be used is at CES. And so they're storing it at a partner's location down in Las Vegas for the year. So, and there are some clients who choose to keep the property themselves and store it themselves. But again, the larger the build, there's not a lot of corporate end clients want to store, 10, 12, 15 crates.
Right. What is your recommendation as far as their saving costs? What are some of the things that you could recommend?
None of us are in this to like say, well, you said $90,000, so we're gonna put something together that's $89,999. That's not our goal, but our goal is from a design perspective. And from a build perspective, how can we best use that $90,000? And our goal from the beginning is always, how do we avoid using the entire $90,000? Because that's a win for everybody. Based on a design, going with less wood in certain areas where we might be able to utilize some of our aluminum structures and clad it in SEG graphics. We previously talked about some of the things that we as exhibitors, if I'm the client, have to think about. So for example, like sustainability, is there anything that you do that can support us in saying that, hey, this is a fully compliant with the Events Industry Council's sustainability standards? Sure. Full compliance is always the goal. We do have a part of our build product line called Ecosystem Sustainable Exhibits, and so we'll typically start directing our process that way if we know that there are sustainable needs for the build. And that really kind of opens the door to everything from FSC certified wood, bamboo, sorghum board, and these different glues, if it's called for. We've got a soy-based adhesive that we'll use on in our laminating process. We've got water-based adhesive that we use for a lot of our fabric applications on our crate lines. Our metal is one of my favorite things to talk about because it's not all of our metal, but a good portion of our metal. We recycle all of our metal that goes through the building, but there's a portion of those profiles that we use that when we recycle, and I'll show you those bins when we do a tour, we've got 3 unique bins that we put all of our drops in. Those bins are collected, ground down, taken just up the river from us, the Columbia River Gorge, where they are ground down, melted, and rebilleted with some virgin aluminum material. And those new billets actually make their way right back down. It's only about a 70-mile trip each way to Portland. And then those new extrusions are pressed then on billets that are made out of guaranteed 28% recycled content of pushed industrial drum, and you mix it with other recycled content that our provider, who presses the billets or who makes the billets, puts in there. It gets us up around 75-77% of recycled content. All of our plastic drops, foam drops, laminate drops, acrylics, we save all those. Those also stay here in Portland. They go to a place where they're ground down, gets pulverized, gets repeated, and when we go around, I'll show you some black cases that we use for our smaller exhibits. They're all made out of 100% regrind plastic. Cool little secret about that is the regrind cases are way stronger than virgin made cases, and they actually work a lot better. So we use that company wide. So it's an important part of what we do daily, and it's definitely a lever that we can pull and really maximize if a client has a built-in sustainable initiative to their exhibit program.
Now, just sort of along that same lines, with regard to just regulations and let's say show managers regulations and local ordinances, that type of thing, where again we have to be compliant in many ways of how we hang things or how power lines are drawn, all these things. In what way could you again support us as an exhibitor, the end client, to remain compliant?
It comes down to exposing us to as much as possible at the front end. So if we know that this is going to XYZ city, and it's going to be, and the general contractor for that event is XYZ company, then we can do our homework and help provide you what you need to make sure that you're the most compliant. So if it's a hanging sign going into San Diego, that's a red flag for us. Doesn't mean that you can't hang it there, but we know that the restrictions on hanging signs at the San Diego Convention Center are much stricter than they are elsewhere. A very recent piece of news, which is super grateful for a group called the Exhibitor Advocate, led by Jessica Silva. They were able to successfully get Freeman to kind of back off some of the regulations that they were imposing in cities nationally on hanging signs that were really starting to bite us all here just in the last year, kind of surprisingly. But we have that knowledge base within our design team, project management team, and our executive management team to if we know where it's going to go, how it's going to be used, then we can then advise and say, hey, you're going into this city, this particular type of sign. You want to do a double-sided SEG backlit sign in this city. We need to start thinking about an engineering stamp that's going to be required. So part of your budget is going to need to account for $2,500, $3,500 in engineering fees, because you're going to need it. Whether or not you think you are or not, I promise you, you're going to end up needing that. So,
final question.
Yeah.
What are some of the pitfalls that you've seen that we should avoid or try to avoid? And alternatively, what are some of the successes or some of the things that we can do to be successful?
Go back to one of the biggest pitfall is not involving your exhibit house and their partners, companies like us, early enough on in the process. Probably the biggest single pitfall. Not having a clear understanding of what your stated goals are for the event you're putting on or the event you're participating in. Know that going in. I think having a well thought out plan of what your measurables are, what your long-term goals are. Is this just a brand play? If it's just a brand play, everybody loves that because we can just kind of go wild on it. We still kind of need to know, where are you going to be? Where on the show floor are you going to be? Who are the exhibitors currently? If the show floor is starting to populate, who are the people around you? And more importantly, where are your competitors on the show floor? Because that may also feed into how we orient the design of your booth and how it's placed on the show floor.
Yep.
So what is your presence like when you walk into what used to be the Sands, now the Venetian Convention Center? When you walk onto that show floor, where your booth is matters. And if you're surrounded by some really, really big tall booths with perimeter walls and stuff, we may need to rethink how we design that. And maybe we're not going to put a big hero piece on this one corner that's just going to solely get blocked. We might end up putting it on another corner where when people walk in the main hall and they turn on one of the main left aisles, boom, it's there.
I think this is really helpful and educational. I've learned a few new things, but I'm really excited to go out on the show floor and have you give us a little bit of a show and tell.
Sounds good.
All right, awesome.
All right,
Great. So the next part of this show moves into a tour of their workshop. Now, we took this shot from the second level where we did the interview, and this shot covers just part of the entire facility. You don't see a number of administrative and operations offices where they house some of their staff. Our first stop on the tour was in the rental exhibits staging area. Of course, rental exhibits come from classic exhibits existing inventory. As a rental customer, you determine what you need for your event, the footprint, the height, the number of counters, the number of walls, etc. All the parts are pulled following your direction. No matter the size, large or small, you can customize the look and the feel exactly to your brand specifications with your logo, your colors and images, and the graphics and the fabrics are printed and cut right on site. We then walked over to one of the freight docks where they place wood scraps into a dumpster, which sits just outside of the building. And these wood scraps are then placed into the recycling process. Now, understand, recycling wood is a challenge relative to all the other materials that they recycle. As Kevin Carty explained earlier during our discussion, Classic Exhibits routinely has aluminum picked up, for which Classic Exhibits receives a payment. The aluminum is then remelted, mixed with other virgin materials and recyclables, and formed into billets. And then the manufacturing cycle begins again. As for plastics, those remnants can be picked up at no fee, but they don't get a payment. The plastics are ground down, pulverized, melted, and made into shipping and storage cases that Classic Exhibits utilizes. In this particular case, there's an added benefit. Classic Exhibits can have the cases produced at a lower cost than what they would pay to purchase them from a manufacturer. Now, in the case of recycling wood, this is a whole other ballgame. Kevin Carty explains that recycling wood remainders, scraps, and shavings is a huge challenge. With perseverance, Classic Exhibits can order a pickup and have those shavings and remnants sent to a landfill. But there's no formal procedure, system, or organized program to do this. There's nothing to assist business. But Classic Exhibits devised a solution. The exhibit house has partnered with other local organizations, and they've created their own recycling program on their own initiative. At their own expense, Classic Exhibits has a partner that picks up the container with the wood scraps, which are then ground down and then sold as mulch. And now our next stop was at the graphics division of the company, known as Summit Graphics PDX. This division of the company does work for the corporate world, retailers, as well as trade shows and events that Classic Exhibits supports. And here they do everything including vinyl. and traditional roll-to-roll wallpaper. And in the left corner in the back, they have a flat surface machine that prints on hard surfaces such as acrylics, sintra, and laminates. But a great portion of this area is dedicated to dye sublimated fabrics. When we entered that area, Kevin showed me several bins that hold paper and other leftover products from other processes. And here is where they're collected and then they're recycled. For the dye sublimation process, images are printed on paper first. The image on the paper is then transferred to a fabric where it sublimates. And from there, it moves to the next step where it's loaded onto a Gerber. And this Gerber has an aluminum belt. And with that aluminum belt, allows them to use lasers. And that's actually the tool they use to cut the fabrics to an exact size with real precision. The sizes of the fabrics can be as wide as 10 feet and any length that you want. There's really no limitation. So after the fabric is printed, there are leftovers. And Classic Exhibits places them in a bin for holding. Classic Exhibits works with their clients to make use of this material. And clients have used the remnants to create promotional pieces. As we continue through the workshop, we reach a staging area where graphic fabrics are then sewn and fitted onto their structures. This shot gives a good example of Classic Exhibit's ability to create large structures. In the background is the frame for a hanging sign measuring 20 feet by 40 feet by 6 feet tall. If your event requires a booth of this size, you'll want to have an exhibit house that has the experience and corresponding logistical knowledge to do this type of work. For example, Mr. Carty explains that a build of this size requires that you'd assemble the hanging sign first, and then you'd need a crane to raise it above the floor onto a truss that's hanging from the ceiling so that it can be raised to make room for the booth build itself. And that portion, of course, includes several phases of its own. The final step is then to lower the sign on top of the booth. This is by no means unique. We've seen these at trade shows all the time. If you seek an exhibit house that creates structures of this magnitude, you'll want to ask if it has the ability. It may already have Classic Exhibits as its partner to fill that void. And then from here, the entire booth is then assembled in a separate staging area, photographed, crated, and shipped to its final destination, which is usually directly to the event. And this makes an appropriate conclusion for our offsite visit. This is a very, very busy time for the entire events industry. So a huge thank you to Kevin Carty and Classic Exhibits for taking a significant amount of time to work with us to create this experience. I really hope you found it interesting and informative. I would really appreciate it if you'd reach out to me, send me your comments, what you liked, what was helpful, and what you would like to learn in the future. It's very important that we hear from you. So here's some reminders. Don't forget, our next episode is coming March 12th, 2024. Episode 7, which is the continuation of supplier insights into creating immersive experiences. Also, please join our LinkedIn networking group, also called Second Tuesday Events for Event Professionals. Just place that term in the LinkedIn search bar, and when you find it, save that group to your favorites and make a request to join, and we'll make sure that it gets approved. And finally, don't forget to book a time where you can take advantage of our complimentary event marketing evaluation. Think of it as a second pair of eyes, someone who's doing a proofreading of sorts for you. we can review an entire event marketing program with multiple events, a singular event that you want to do a specific promotion, or we can look at a specific activation within an event. It's your choice. It has no risk and there's no charge. Just think of it as a complimentary service, a chance to get a critique and perhaps some recommendations. So, with that, I bid you farewell and thanks again. I will see you next time. Take care. All the best. Cheers.